Good afternoon. My name is Faith McCreary, and for the last 2 years, my focus has been the Internet of Things, otherwise known as IoT. IoT means things like phones, cars, appliances, forklifts, and even baby pacifiers can connect to the Internet where they share data, which is used to make them smart and makes possible new, seemingly magical interactions. In this world where smart and connected has become the new ordinary, we can control our entire house with just our voice, have our self-driving car take us places, let self-diagnosing machines fix themselves, wear magic bands that let our hotel rooms recognize us, have our lost suitcase tell us where to find it, and even sleep on pillows that will automatically detect snoring and then gently vibrate us to get us to change our sleep position, all without waking us up. It can feel like magic, but the magic comes at a cost. An army of smart technologies that constantly gather and share data about where we are, what we are doing, and what is known about us to create these magical interactions. These technologies help make the magic happen, but they may also reveal more of ourselves than we are comfortable with, in ways that may make us anxious or do harm. So today, I'm here to ask you to think about how this new ordinary is happening now, how we make the magic happen, to think about how the human encounters it, to think past the big data, cool algorithms, and smart technology that it is built on, to design for the privacy of the human in the middle of it all. But how do we as IoT wizards, and dare I say even magicians, make privacy-mindful magic happen? Today I'll pull back the curtain a little and share 4 tricks that anyone can use to help create smart, privacy-mindful magic that people want. These tricks or strategies each have a method, but are nothing mystical and probably much more mundane than you might imagine. For the real magic is not in the illusion itself, but rather in the process we follow to make it possible. I'm a principal researcher and experienced architect at Intel in the Internet of Things group, and the UX lead for Intel's Industrial and Energy division. I've also worked with smart homes and smart buildings and a range of other smart experiences. I spend my time, much as shown here, out in the world trying to understand how people respond to this new ordinary that IoT is bringing about. The work I'm about to present today is a collaboration with 2 of my Intel colleagues. The first, Alex Lefirgo, is an archaeologist turned anthropologist and one of the foremost experts in the new ordinary that smart homes are bringing about. The second, Heather Patterson, is an Intel research scientist who is a neuroscientist turned legal scholar turned social scientist who's a leading expert on privacy. Together, we have a shared passion for understanding how these new technologies are shifting the boundaries of daily life and what ordinary people worry about these smart and connected things seeing and hearing. Their very different perspectives have both inspired me and challenged me during our shared journey through privacy and IoT, the journey I'll tell you about today. Now, in our new seemingly magic ordinary, the places where we live and work, homes, workplaces, hotels, stores, amusement parks, and even cities, as well as ourselves, are increasingly becoming instrumented with sensors and beacons and other data-generating technologies. This multitude of smart and connected things brings a ubiquitous intelligence to the physical world that offers companies increased visibility into the minutiae of our daily life, whether it is who we eat with, where we go step by step, how much we drink, how long we wait for a bus, where we sleep, what we argue about, or even how much we're willing to pay for that amazing pairs of shoes. Potentially, even our most intimate and personal acts may leave data footprints that service companies and others can access. Privacy in this smart and connected world has become about the bits and pieces of information we leave behind, intentionally and unintentionally. While all these smart and connected things may not equate to the walls having actual eyes and ears, it does blur the boundaries between the physical and digital worlds. The smart data-generating technologies that make the magic happen also render ineffective many of our traditional ways of maintaining our boundaries as we go about our day. We pull our curtains, we put up a do not disturb sign, we may give a false birthday to a company, we may lie to our doctor. As a result of this increased visibility, people may be left feeling vulnerable, as if the walls around them had actually sprouted eyes and ears. Worse, in this new ordinary world of blurred reality, these walls also have mouths, where these smart and connected things almost certainly will send data and communicate information about how we humans are interacting with the world around us. Old boundaries on our activities may disintegrate, leaving us feeling exposed. Now, we may be willing to put up with this increased visibility if we magically get what we want. but it may feel creepy at times or make us anxious. Take the first smart product concept I encountered. It was designed to automatically prevent leak damage in bathrooms by detecting leaks and automatically turning off the water before it caused damage. As a homeowner who had previously come home to water streaming out of the ceiling, it's the kind of magic I wanted, at least until I learned how the product worked. With an always-on microphone and some sweet algorithm that would let it distinguish the sound of leaks from other sounds in the bathroom. Then I started thinking about all the other sounds that always-on microphone would capture. Just take a moment, think about it. Plus, do any of us really want products to know when we are on the toilet how long our showers are or over here singing in the shower? Knowing an always-on listening devices in a bathroom, even for a good reason, just feels creepy. And the magic of the recommendations or preferences that are byproducts of smart technology can be equally anxiety-inducing. Like my friend here, we wonder, why does the company think I need that? Or what does the company think they know about me? Or what does what am I doing say about me? Data is not neutral, and neither are the recommendations that we receive. What does it mean to manage your reputation in a world filled with smart technologies, making perceived value judgments about what you need or want based on data you may have never seen or even realized companies have? So how do we create smart products and services that people will trust and feel comfortable embracing, despite this fundamental shift that these technologies represent? Our new ordinary will be smart, connected everything, everywhere. It's a world of incredible possibilities to transform and improve our daily experiences. But it's also a world of new risks. A world where digital privacy concerns spill over into the physical world. A world that those of us in this virtual room are responsible for helping make happen. Now, traditional ways of explaining and managing digital privacy concerns, think that those little notices you get, yes, do you accept this or no, don't you, will be insufficient in a world where smart technology is inserted inconspicuously in ordinary objects, like this light bulb, for instance. How do we obtain meaningful consent from individuals to the collection of personal data through devices like this smart light bulb here that lack a display? How exactly does notice and choice play out when numerous things are collecting and sharing personal data? Do companies precede each instance of data collection with a notice? Such a model could rapidly overwhelm us in the moment and over time. Even with just the privacy policies around today, Lori Craner is the chief technologist at the FTC, along with her student Alicia McDonald, found that people would need to spend about 6 weeks per year doing nothing besides reading privacy policies if they actually read them all in their entirety. Who has time for that? Now, oftentimes, the focus of privacy is security. And how do we keep private information, be it credit card information, or your preferences, secure from others? How do we keep the data tidal wave that comes with smart experiences from being hacked? But privacy isn't just about security. In the physical world, security is why we lock the door, but privacy is why we close the curtains. Locks help maintain our security, but they are not sufficient for privacy. It's the same in the digital world. Information security is table stakes for privacy in IoT, but is not sufficient to ensure it. Now, while the laws and regulations surrounding privacy provide guardrails, they're not sufficient really to ensure trust and can at times even send you as someone developing IoT solutions down different directions. For instance, in Europe, pretty much everything is excluded unless specifically allowed, while in the US, pretty much everything is allowed unless specifically included. Worse, there's lots of laws and regulations. In the US, there's HIPAA and FERPA and EPA and ADA, OSHA, and oh so many others. It's a veritable alphabet soup of guidelines. That isn't even taking account the other countries. What does that leave us as people developing IoT solutions and services? What issues exactly should we be concerned with? What problems are we really trying to solve? Now, oftentimes, when people talk about privacy and smart technology, they advocate privacy by design. Privacy by design is the process of building privacy-enhancing mechanisms into the design of technology as opposed to trying to paste it on afterwards. Sounds good, much like UX. Who can argue with it? Privacy by design is defined by the 7 core principles shown here. Now, I won't go through them all individually, but these core principles absolutely make sense. Certainly from a user experience perspective, which is my background, makes perfect sense. Who really is going to argue against the need to respect user privacy? and that, probably privacy should be the default, or that, we should embed privacy in the design of solutions before we start building them. But these principles offer little guidance to us as to how to meet these key requirements, especially in the realm of IoT. How exactly do we as people developing IoT solutions and services make this state happen? Now, people are already attempting to achieve the smart equivalent of Harry Potter's invisibility cloak, namely digital invisibility. They're doing it through a variety of means. There's, the optical camouflage shown here, but people also resort to much simpler approaches, like they block their phone from passive pinging because they don't want their location disclosed. They do all sorts of weird makeup and hairstyles and special clothing and even glasses to subvert facial detection algorithms. They may jam GPS to prevent people from finding you. But digital invisibility comes at a cost, the cost of not being able to take advantage of the benefits of these new technologies. For instance, what happens to the trucker who's preventing her employer from tracking her location with a GPS jammer and is in a big accident without the means to get help that she desperately needs? Or the driver on the same road who is navigating using GPS who gets lost because the trucker next to him was using a GPS jammer. And much of the solutions that are currently under consideration are very black and white, like many of the technologies we create and even people's perceptions of privacy. Either your actions are private or they're not. Either your information is visible or it's not. But privacy in the real world is not black and white. Privacy means different things to different people, and privacy preferences are highly contextual. The information that you are willing to share is vastly different depending on whether you're at home, at work, partying with others, or trying to navigate somewhere. What you are willing to share in one context may be dramatically different from what you are willing to share in another. Privacy is about having control over how information flows, not just choosing between sharing or not sharing. Helen Nussbaum's concept of contextual integrity tells us that privacy is fundamentally about appropriate information sharing that is in accordance with generally understood context-dependent informational norms. So if we are to succeed in creating the future smart solutions that people want, we will need to take into account the rich spectrum of human attitudes, contexts, and problems. If that sounds complex and complicated, it is. It sounds like there's no simple solutions, you're right. But it will only happen if we put the human at the middle of the magic. But where do we start? Now, transforming privacy theory into actionable IoT strategy is very much an active area of research, with much passion and energy focused on the wicked problems that we have been discussing. It's an emerging field of focus for many, and the work we are doing at Intel is both contributing to the larger body of research as well as helping us create actionable strategies and privacy-mindful experiences within the context of the Internet of Things. In the remainder of this talk, I'll pull back the curtain a bit and share 4 tricks or strategies that we've been using at Intel to help create smart, privacy-mindful magic. Many of the tricks have their roots in the legal space and are based on leading privacy models. Now, this may surprise you, especially coming from a UX person, because we don't usually get advice from legal, but these models have been proven to be surprisingly useful when it comes to understanding and designing smart experiences. We have used these tricks successfully with hundreds of people in a range of settings spanning smart homes and smart buildings and even industrial spaces. The beauty of them is their technological agnosticism, which allows you to understand the impact of multiple smart technologies in a given setting. Now, I'll share a little about each of these tools and discuss ways you might put them to practice in your own projects. Now, the discussion will not be comprehensive or at great length, but it should be enough to get you started and on the path of using these approaches. I'll talk about 4 models. The first is privacy segmentation. The next one is basically contextual privacy probes. It's a way of getting the information you need about the users you're focused on with your solution. There's an information sensitivity model. Taxonomy of privacy concerns that you can use to check what you've created or you're planning on putting out into the world. Now, the first one is privacy segmentation. And, think of it much like the sorting hat in Harry Potter that determines which of the 4 school houses each student belongs to. Privacy segmentation can help you group people based on their attitudes toward privacy and their degree of trust around data use. In the work we have done, we have seen that the attitudinal differences assessed by Weston's Privacy Segmentation and Core Privacy Orientation Index is associated with differences in the adoption of smart technology and even what technology people are attracted to. Now, before I go further, I must tell you that Weston's segmentation has lately become somewhat controversial as it doesn't have the predictability in the legal space that it originally promised, nor does it correlate with things that its original intended audience of social scientists find useful, for instance, using demographic characteristics like gender or the like to predict what categories specific types of people will fall into. However, probably no one here is really the original intended audience, and for our purposes, it does provide an easy metric and a useful descriptor that will help you understand people's attitudes towards handling their personal information that is particularly relevant to those of us working in the Internet of Things. To classified people, you have them rate their agreement with 3 questions related to whether they are in control of their personal information, if they trust businesses to handle their information in a proper or confidential way, and whether existing privacy practices and laws offer a reasonable level of protection. Based on this, you can group people into basically 3 categories. The first, privacy fundamentals, place a high value on privacy. They also are people that, are attracted to certain value propositions such as smart security. Privacy pragmatists who weigh the value of personal data and potential risk before sharing. So they just don't automatically assume that the IoT solution that you did is worth it. They're going to evaluate it. And then privacy unconcerned who really don't know what the fuss is about, and if it looks interesting, they'll go ahead and use it. Privacy pragmatists is at the heart of controversy I previously alluded to. Weston's work suggests that privacy pragmatists actually read privacy policies and make informed decisions before sharing their data. Do they? Probably not based on available data, but they are much more mindful about approach to privacy. And they're also, interestingly, the group that's least interested in smart things so far. Maybe because we haven't created a smart experience, it is worth trading away some of their privacy. That said, I definitely encourage you to look into the index. This is a useful way to help you understand your target audience and their attitudes to privacy and how it's likely to impact their use of the solution that you're proposing. As professionals studying and designing and developing smart things, we probably have all at one time or another wondered, how do people imagine this coming wave of smart things will transform how they live, work, and play? Where will visibility into which activities and situations will make people uncomfortable? How do we even start a conversation about this future new ordinary? Now, if you've attempted it, you know that asking directly about as successful as using a magic 8-ball to predict the future. People don't really know what smart technology, they're not like the people that are on this phone call who have a deep understanding of what the technology might do for them. So instead, what can we as people that want to build solutions that people want do? We at Intel have been using exploratory privacy probes that, rather than asking concrete questions, aim to playfully inspire people to think about the coming new ordinary. The probes allow us to help people imagine what living in a smart world might be like, while simultaneously documenting and capturing those context-based insights into their expectations and fears. This information lets us tease out informational norms and opportunities for smart technologies. So how exactly do we do it? Can you get people with varying levels of technological understanding to engage in meaningful discussion of boundary setting within the context of IoT? We do it by not mentioning the technology at all. Instead, we use this brain, a brain like the one you have, I have, we each have, a brain that's a lot less colorful and fake than the ones shown here, a brain that we well understand what it might be able to do for us, unlike that pesky technology. We ask people, imagine you could give a brain to part of your home, your workplace, your city, like a door, a wall, or faucet, or maybe it's just an object in that space, like a cereal bowl or a light bulb, or even a tool. What would you give a brain to? What would the item be able to do for you or with you that it can't do now? How would it change your life? We also asked, what concerns, if any, do you have about this item having a brain? And we found that over half the time, the concern is about information sharing, about privacy, which makes it an important problem for us as people who are developing IoT solutions to solve. We also used this kid, this kind of irksome kid in elementary school who repeated every word you said. Yeah, we all had one. I'm tired, you'd say. I'm tired, he'd respond. Stop it, you fume. Stop it, he'd parrot. And so we asked people, suppose your home, your building, your workplace, your city was that kid. What activity would you be worried about or nervous about it repeating? We also asked, what 3 words or short phrases describe how you imagine others will see you if this activity is repeated to them? The activities people described were pretty mundane. The words they imagined others using to describe them based on knowledge of these activities were overwhelmingly native. Lazy, gross, dirty, messy, unorganized, irresponsible, disgusting, unclean, weird, wasteful, and one more word, normal. For overwhelmingly, the activities that people most worry about smart things and solutions and services repeating aren't criminal. They instead are things that we likely all do, but no one wants to show you. And what we found is, as the process of developing these services and solutions, if we explore the situations before we start introducing the technology of these probes, we can better identify specific information that's sensitive in nature before we put the technology into the situation. But how do we go from understanding what is sensitive to understanding what to do about it? If you remember, it's really, it's all about data. It's IoT. Because data or information is the heart of the magic that makes IoT happen. Without it, the magic would not be possible. But to successfully design the magic that people will want, we have to be able to not only understand their sensitivities around specific information, we must be able to find appropriate boundaries about what should be knowable and shareable in a particular context. To understand people's comfort zones around data usage. However, the discretion that people expect us to build into these IoT solutions is tied very closely to social context at hand. People have strong expectations about what kinds of things should be known about them and who should know them and how the information should be used. And as we said before, these expectations will vary dramatically. I may be fine sharing my health history with my doctor, but it's not necessarily information that I might share with my manager or my colleagues at Intel. It might feel inappropriate. But we found as we worked through in a variety of settings over the last couple of years that there's different types of comfort zones. These different zones are clusters of expectations and preferences for information boundaries were stable across a range of settings, from smart homes to smart cities and even smart workplaces. They were stable even though the information contained within them was not. There are 4 zones, and I'll talk about each briefly. And these 4 zones of information sensitivity define levels of privacy expectation that directly inform how we create the technology, how we design and build privacy into the IoT solutions we're putting out in the world. Now let's look at each of the zones a bit more closely. Now, long before our magic knew ordinary, we had information that we were willing to share and willing to have certain people know. I mean, we all do. But this shared information, people are generally comfortable with this, people in their circle knowing. They expect that, the information will be shared, it'll be necessary and relevant to whatever service they get in return or value, whether it's friendship or, your natural gas company doing, helping you balance out your bill. And, we tend to not want to overshare, because that might burden people and people might not like that. And we, control access. We tend to look to social networks rather than saying it's about specific individuals. So we focus on where the information travels today. And there's norms associated with certain types of circles. For instance, doctors are expected to keep patient information confidential, even though they share patient information amongst those treating the patient. Information must be considered private if it remains within a confined circle. These are the boundaries that, have to be respected by this IoT solution that we're creating. Information, when it goes outside that circle, has to be treated as private. privacy concerns occur with smart technologies when we let them jump between different circles, escape into the larger world, or where we violate the norms of a particular circle. But to control and to define privacy with this sort of comfort zone, we have to look to circles. We can't say, hey, list out all the people you want to know this. It's about the social networks that are around the data. Now, we're already willing to trade some data, think of it as our personal currency, for magical interactions, as long as there's something of sufficient value in return, we get tangible benefits. Information that falls into this category can definitely be used to feel smart experiences and often a byproduct of people imagining what a brain might do for them. For instance, people, when you ask, will say, I want the brain to do this, and I expect the brain to base what it does on this. But it's traded information. We expect the outcome of passing on information is positive for us. So if they share it with us as IoT solution developers, they expect it to always work in their favor. And, generally we're comfortable with a specific other knowing if it's necessary to deliver the value. For instance, maybe it's a service or it's a device. Here, people are most likely to worry that the information will be used for purposes other than what they agreed to, or that the entity that the information was shared was not properly secure or protected. Equifax is a great example of a trade gone wrong. We also have secrets that we don't often share, and at least we don't share at large. Things we wouldn't want repeated, and oftentimes it's motivated by embarrassment, but let us keep quiet or at least exposure minimized. This information is among the most sensitive, and sharing is always a privacy concern when it comes to smart technologies. People want their smart technologies to be very discreet when it comes to this kind of information. They expect their secrets will remain unknown. There are activities only I, or maybe a select few, will ever know about. There are areas in our home or our workplace that will never produce data that's available outside of that space. That computation, when it happens, will happen in that space. To be trusted, smart experiences must ensure this information is not shared past the select few in ways that are personally identifiable. My early example on privacy concerns in bathrooms is a perfect example of this. But we also fear that these smart things that the people on this bridge and in this virtual conference are building will leak information and potentially tell on us, information that could point the finger at us and get us in trouble. You see a surge of this in this category in settings where there's potential consequences, like at work. Type of information is the most sensitive of all the types, and sharing is always a privacy concern. People want their smart technology to please not tell us information ever. And better yet, don't collect it. And if you do collect it and use it, make sure you forget it as soon as possible. It's a big factor in people's pushback around ongoing monitoring or location tracking. An example of this kind of information would be, for instance, oil and gas workers who I work with a lot, go out in the field and, they may not wear their personal protection equipment unless they really think they need it, because it can be pretty uncomfortable. But that was known to their company. They could face sanctions or dismissal. So is it any surprise that one of the most popular smart privacy-enabling features for workers were the ones that told people when they were being monitored and when they were about to do something that could get them in trouble? Now, we have found that by classifying the information in our smart technologies are collecting into these zones, we more easily align to people's expectations. By understanding what zone information sensitivity a particular item falls into, we can design usages to align with the expected information flows of the technology. It can impact everything to where we do the computation, to the actual experience, to where we store the data. It has implications across the solution stack. But how do we turn these specific concerns into strategies for different categories of information? For that, we look to the last of the tools I'm going to be sharing today, which is Solow's Taxonomy of privacy concerns. What's nice about this taxonomy is it breaks privacy issues into bite-sized chunks. It's a reference, can be to many purposes, all not envisioned by its creator, but it's very useful when it comes to developing IoT solutions. It can serve as a guide, as each type of concern provides a concrete problem for us as designers and technologists to solve. It can be creative fodder for patterns or for technologies that you might develop that would address a particular problem. It can be transformed into heuristics or questions that, if you're on a product team, you can ask yourself to see, oh, is this actually potentially going to cause a problem before it goes out into the world and the privacy concerns blow up? Trends around people's concerned specific location or types of activities can help inform the development of products in that space. And it helps us transform the many concerns that we uncovered using the previous approaches into an actual solution strategy. The taxonomy organizes privacy in terms of harmful privacy at risk. And I'll talk about each of those categories briefly, but it's well worth the time to take to read Sol's taxonomy in its original form. The first category relates to information collection. And as you can imagine, less is more here. That, yes, making all the magic happen takes data, but it's also the root of privacy concern. About 20% of people's concerns about smart technology relate to surveillance. They were concerned with the ability of this technology as all-seeing crystal balls that could watch, listen to, or record their activities. In the real world, people use doors and hedges and all the other physical barriers to control the collection of personal information. They want them seen in this new smart world that we're creating. So how do we put this to practical use? First, make sure you understand the purpose of any data you can collect. Just because you can collect it doesn't mean that the people that are at the center of the experience want you to. We need to limit the capture to data that is absolutely required. Don't get some extra just because you might find a use for it later. And much of privacy is perception. So limit device capabilities to what's really necessary for the purpose. Don't, put an all-seeing camera into a bathroom unless it's really absolutely necessary. And there's a clear value to the person that's going to be observed. Be aware that location tracking and ongoing monitoring is always going to be a concern to people. The second one relates to information processing. And a lot of that, if you remember back, goes back to people are sharing their data with us. That data is helping fuel the experiences and technologies that we are building. But how we store it and use it makes a big difference. If you think about it, magic shows are places where people are willing to be sawed in half, locked in containers, have strange objects pulled from their ears, and they trust no matter how mind-blowing the act, no harm will come to them. Similarly, for the human in the middle to trust smart things and let them into their lives, they need to trust that smart things do no harm. To trust that smart things will use judgment and not share potentially embarrassing details or damaging information. To trust that the details of what is shared is blurred so they're less vulnerable. Be confident that their magical experiences won't go wrong and leak personal data willy-nilly. That smart things stressed by an outside force will absorb the threat, saving the human in the middle from the injured. The data used to know must be kept secure and used in ways that fall within social norms. Ask yourself, who, if anyone, does a human in the middle share the data with today? What benefits do they get in return? What data do they expect to have kept secret? What's shared? What are they willing to trade for value? Now, next up, we have information dissemination, or basically, how do we transfer and share the data? And for this, we really have to be willing to draw back the curtain and show people how the magic happens. While the data can give rise to magical experiences, we have to be sensitive to the fact that our interpretation of the collected data and inferences we make may not be correct, nor are they value neutral. In our work, we found that concerns around exposure or the revealing of nudity or bodily functions was 3 times less likely than those related to disclosure or revelation of truthful information that impacts other people's perception of you. So basically, people worry a lot more about being perceived differently by others rather than they were being worried about being seen naked. We got to make it easy for the humans in the middle to discern what's known about them. We have to allay people's fears by making sure that the data is accurate, that we're open in communicating our data handling practices to people, and it has to be done in a language they understand that's focused and context specific. It has to be easy for people to control and discover and manage the information that's known about them. And when we gather data and we share it, we have to make sure that it can't be tied back to a particular individual, but rather we fuel our smart experiences as much as possible with aggregated information that can't be traced back to the individual. Now, Solon's last category relates to invasions or intrusions into an individual's private affairs. Now, people want to be confident that these smart products will not disrupt their lives, especially in places traditionally tranquil or private. Think of it as bathrooms or maybe hotel bedrooms. They want their technology to blend in the world seamlessly, much like the three-dimensional image shown here stays hidden in a magic eye picture until you look for it. They don't want to feel their personal space is being invaded or feel that it is intruding into personal decision-making around private activities. Magic happens when we focus on enhancing the human's experience without requiring them to change their behavior or visibly intruding. A real-world example of the product that violates this principle is a product concept for predictive maintenance in public bathrooms. You have little paired sensors staring down at you when you enter and left the bathroom. Now, the sensor didn't actually see you, instead of just counting people entering and leaving, but the sensor design made you feel like you're being seen, felt intrusive. As much as possible, aim for invisible and encourage setup. Help people find ways to disconnect. Now, you have 4 tricks or strategies for creating privacy-mindful products and services for IoT. But these strategies do not privacy-mindful experiences make. People do. So how will you help make the magic happen? How will you navigate this amazing, messy, crazy, complex world that the Internet of Things is bringing about to create and develop smart experiences that people trust? It's a world where the walls may not only have eyes and ears, but also mouths that may share our secrets. A world of incredible possibilities to transform the world for the better, but only if we can earn a place in the lives of the human in the middle of it all. We know that there's no magic wand that we can do to create privacy-mindful products and services. But we each need to do our part. We need to always ask, what problems are we solving and for whom? Are we collecting the minimal amount of data needed to make the magic happen? Are we protecting both the individual's data and their reputation? Do we allow people to pull back the curtain? Will our solution fit, or will it be intrusive? We need to hold our teams and ourselves accountable to give us answers to these questions. So I ask, what will you do? Thank you very much for your time. And now I'm going to switch over and hopefully find some questions in this interface. I see a question. I think privacy can be lost. For instance, if you have a smart camera on the front door and it recognizes people, well, what do you do with that data afterwards? Do you remember everyone that's there so you have a record? I mean, a large part of whether or not the extent to which privacy is going to be impacted by the smart technology depends on how we store the data, save the data. Do we make people aware that their picture is being taken? Do we know that they're part of this neural network that we're using to train something on? So how do we treat that human that's in the middle of that interaction will impact the degree to which we really can be private or not private. Do we give the people tools that they can basically check out? Like one of the most popular things that people envision for this new smart future is basically think of it as a privacy deflector where you can like push a button and it renders you invisible to all these smart things around you. Do we give people the tools to be able to control their own privacy in the same way they do in the physical world, or we just assume that it's the smart world and it's lost? It's really up to us. Thank you very much for your attention today. And if you have any questions, please do reach out. You have my email, and I'm happy to further discussion because it's definitely an area of passion.